Shine Comics is rage baiting all of you.
Shine Comics, he blocked me.
Well-known rage baiter named Shine Comics.
So I'm sure many of you guys know the comic book influencer Shine Comics.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy Shine Comics. We are here with another interview, and today we have none other than Eric July. I'm gonna let you introduce yourself because, like, young Ripper.
Well, yeah. I am Eric July, founder, owner of Ripperverse Publishing. Dabbed in a little bit of everything, depends on where you know me from. Some know me from the content creation, some know me from some of the music stuff that I did, but I think a lot of people are now paying attention to what I'm doing and attempting to do with the Ripperverse. And by the way, I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, and I don't think attempting is the right word because, like, you're fully you're there. I mean, your background is it's fully realized, man.
I'm trying out here, man. I'm trying.
Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, like you just said it. You've done everything. Like, people know you from everything. I mean, like, I've you used to be a 2K. You were a 2K YouTuber.
Yeah, 2K streamer. Yeah, doing all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, music and everything. But comics is it's very interesting. So, when did you first like, how young were you when you started reading comics, and like, what were your favorite stories in the beginning?
Great question. I was very young. The first comic book that I remember just so vividly being introduced to and actually keeping up with was Mark Waid's Flash. That was back in obviously I think he might have started in the late 80s. Obviously, I didn't get too into it until the 90s, but that was my first real introduction to comic books. But also during that period of time, it was very easy to just fall in love with some of the characters just because it was like prime for especially with like network television, between like Batman the animated series and X-Men the animated series, even Spiderman, Silver Surfer was coming out during that period of time as well. So it was just a lot of material out there that made it very easy to get into. Just comic book characters that were outside of obviously the comic books themselves. But yeah, it was Flash in general. My mother was the one that I always attribute to kind of introducing me to that. I was a fast kid. Obviously, I did track and field all the way through my college days, and obviously it was easy for me to connect with a character like Flash. And I think I can't speak for every youngster, but I think for me at least, it was, you as a kid, you pay attention to like the powers, and that's one of the things that's really, really cool about the characters. But as you age, you start to gain a better appreciation for their experiences and what they are going through, and as well as just the overall storylines and just universe in general. So it was ripe. It was a ripe time to be a comic book, or rather become a fan of comic books during that period of time that I was growing up.
Right, absolutely. So, like, you were like probably like 7 or like 8 around that time when you were reading that.
Yeah, that was probably, that sounds about right. Like I said, I mean, that was the mid 90s when all of that, like the X-Men, the animated series, and I was at Fox Kids, if I'm not mistaken, that was coming on. So yeah, that was about the time. 7, 8 years old was the time that I was like legitimately introduced to, like, when I talk about comic books, yeah, you had like comic book strips and all those Scholastic and all that stuff that we were into when we were growing up. But like, as far as Marvel, DC is concerned, that was my first introduction. It was Mark Waid's Flash. Obviously, Wally was my Flash growing up as well. So that was for sure around that period of time. Probably, yes, it was probably even younger than that, maybe closer to like 5. When I was like first like genuinely introduced to it. But like I said, didn't really gain an appreciation for it like I do right now until like the 2000s. And then once I started hitting those teenage years, sort of in the mid 2000s, when I first got my first job, I could actually afford it myself to go buy comic books. So rather than like just getting them from friends and whatnot, so I could pay for them myself. So that was in the mid 2000s for sure.
Absolutely. So, like, you started doing YouTube. You started you covered many topics on YouTube, and then you started commentating on comics. I feel like your story in because you didn't just become a writer, like you have your own comic company, like fully realized, and it's doing great right now. And I feel like you have probably one of the best underdog stories because, like, to go from like going on YouTube and like talking and criticizing, praising some comics, criticizing some, to literally creating your own. What was that like? What made you want to create your own comics? I know it may seem like a crazy question, but like
No,
what
not at
really
all.
made you want to like, nah, like I want to create my own stuff.
Well, it's a couple of things. So I always had aspirations to be a writer like of comic books. I had ghost written for, I don't know. I mean, I did that all through my latter teenage years and all through my 20s for money, namely in music, especially writing for up and coming bands. Got plenty of credits, like just writing, ghost writing for a bunch of bands for their music and whatnot. But writing like creative content is something I've obviously been doing since I was a youngster. But wanting to do comic books specifically, the way that I saw it is that my life trajectory put me down a path that was it wasn't really conducive to becoming, let's say, a comic book writer, like going
Right.
like let's say through the industry, through those what they deem as the more proper channels, considering just where I was at, what was making it for what was doing it for me. You mentioned YouTube and everything, but namely my music, that was my first like I guess like as far as the public is concerned, like their introduction to me when I was a youngster. I've been on YouTube since I was what 16 as well, from the OG days of YouTube, and it was all centered around like music. So that was my kind of creative outlet for a very long time that people knew me for. And what happened was a couple of different things. Obviously, financially, I was in a much better place than I was when I was young, so I could actually afford to do it because like I just said, I wasn't going through those channels, let's say,
Right.
of trying to work inside the mainstream or anything of that nature. So I knew pretty early on that if this was something that was going to happen, it was going to come by doing the creative project myself as either owner of a company or doing something with like maybe a smaller brand. And I was perfectly fine with that and content with that. Honestly, didn't think that was something I was going to be able to achieve until I was like in my 40s or what have you. But everything kind of accelerated going into 20, and like I said, I was kind of at my, let's say, peak of like content creation, and music was going great, obviously backwards on my band. We were touring, doing everything. So it was like a time that, again, my financial situation was great. And then looking at the state of the industry, where, look, I like to think I have creative bone in my body. And it got to a point where I'm doing all these videos and I'm griping and complaining. And then, yes, I do my positive reviews, did plenty of those. Actually, I have more positive reviews
Right.
on comic books than I do negative ones per se. But I'm looking at it from this perspective of this: you're a creator. I'm taking zooming out. You're a creator, or you claim to be. Instead of doing all the griping that you're doing, and now that you have the finances, why don't you get out there and do it yourself? So, looking at the general state of the industry, both economically as well as creatively, and in my own financial situation, it was just a recipe for a success. Did I think that it would pop off the way that it did? Absolutely not. But it did not. I didn't think that there was going to be a better time than to do it when I did it. And if I was going to do it, I wanted to do it for real, like investing again hundreds of thousands of dollars of my own money, and also sticking with it, because I do think that a lot of folks have a tendency when they do want to do like a creative, like a comic book, it's kind of like, hey, it's just a little something I'm going to do, and then I'm going to go to do other ventures or what have you. For me, it was like, no, this is my love. I want to do it, and I'm taking this as seriously as I realistically can. And I totally understand why, because of that, some people may have been skeptical initially on, because they didn't know if I was just gonna take a go run with the loot, or I was just gonna do like kind of a one-off thing and just go back to yapping on YouTube or whatever. And I just wanted to, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to create, and it took some adjustments. Make no mistake. I always talk about this and how just becoming a better professional was not something that I just had figured out early on. Like,
Right.
not at all. It was something that I had to kind of grow into. I had to learn. I had to adapt. And now I'm in this position of where, sure, we can do videos, but I'm not like doing all the videos on like what the mainstream is doing, mainly because that's unprofessional. I'm at a different stage of my life, but the majority of my like creative bandwidth is caught up in, creating comics, editing, doing something as it pertains to like the business and continuing to build this company is really where most of my time is going, in addition to my family, but aside from that, most of the time's going into the Ripperverse.
Absolutely, man. Like, yeah, ISOM specifically, like it kind of felt like it really felt like a breath of fresh air, because, and I want to know if this was intentional. To me, like when it comes to the character designs, even the art, like Cliff Richard's art, which I love, it really felt like a comic that it had that like mid to late 2000s vibe to me,
Yes,
at least. Like, was that intentional
100%.
at all?
Absolutely, it was intentional. I mean, that goes even from his design. And I've
Right.
talked about this before. In that, look, ISOM's design, it's like a more simplified design.
Yeah.
It's more recognizable in the sense that, like, if you are a follower of comic books, you'll see his design that, okay, that looks like a superhero. It's not
Yeah.
so flashy or anything. That was specifically by design, and especially with him being the first character that everybody was introduced to, that was done on purpose, totally on purpose. Now, obviously, we get a little more intricate with our designs of some of those other characters that I have had the blessing of being able to create, but specifically with ISOM, that was very, very, very intentional. Again, that was the era that I grew up in, but also I just wanted something that people that are readers of comic books, like especially grew up in my era, it was something that could be like recognizable. Sure, you can get those newbie fans that would see it and maybe be somewhat intrigued by it, but it was especially a nod to the era that I grew up in, as well as just everybody else, to see that character and be like, okay, that's something that kind of hits home and something that's recognizable.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, because it's weird how like eye catching it is, because it's like it's so simple. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, like he's wearing black and orange. Like it doesn't seem like it should be that, like
yeah.
cool looking, but it's like it really grows, especially I mean when Kanan White's, doing the covers and
He's the
stuff.
best.
He's a different breed,
Yeah,
absolutely.
he
And
is.
yeah, so like in terms of ISOM, well, I know kind of the inspiration with the name and stuff, but you can explain to a
Mhm,
new audience like what was the inspiration behind the name ISOM? You can explain that, but also the
mhm.
character of ISOM, like what was the inspiration behind the character, like how he acts and stuff.
So, I mean, I drew pretty much all of I saw him and his family members. I got inspiration from my own family members. As you mentioned, the name Isom, that is my great grandfather's name. Isom. The same can be said for all of the characters that are connected to him in terms of his family members.
Mm.
So, Altona, and even with Harriet and Jacob, these are all ancestors and great grandfathers, great uncles, that I named them specifically in that manner. But as far as his design, or rather his look, drew inspiration from the biggest inspiration was my uncle Gary. He recently passed, and just in terms of his just approach to things and his general attitude, I got so much inspiration. And obviously his design in that of itself, definitely, if you see a picture of him, especially my younger, my uncle Gary when he was younger, it was straight out. It was straight
Mhm.
from my uncle, which I was drawing that inspiration from. And with it being the first project, and I knew that I needed to get my feet wet, I just wanted to stick to what I know.
Mhm.
Didn't want to so much draw inspiration from like myself, or anything that I did, because I didn't want to kind of fall into that trap of like self inserts or anything. I drew my inspiration from my experiences, more so with my family and some of their own experiences, as well. So very much inspired by namely my uncle Gary, but everybody, from my, again, great grandfather's stories that were passed down, and some of their experiences, and even what they do with Isom having his own ranch, and coming from a family that farmed and everything like that. That's all I drew all that inspiration from my family.
Absolutely, yeah. And I love the scene at the end of ISOM 1 where he's hugging his niece and stuff. He has a great relationship with his niece. Cause I'm an uncle, and I have like my niece is like 5 years old, and I love my niece so much. And like you don't really see that much in comics. It's usually
Yeah,
like just like, for father, daughter, or something like that. So it's
yeah,
like that was awesome. And like all of the characters, they feel real, they feel authentic. How do you, because a lot of people ask that, like how do you how do you like cross the bridge or not bridge the gap of like a character having like cultural authenticity without it being like, you know, like feeling like you're preaching to the reader or like it, you know what I'm saying? Like that.
Yeah, most definitely. Like it's not the easiest thing to do, right? Like you want it to be organic, you want it to feel natural, but yeah, that's a trap that especially a lot of modern like creators they kind of fall into because maybe it's various reasons. I can't speak to why exactly they do it, but it was something that I for sure wanted to avoid. I'm very aware and cognizant of that. Where yeah, it can come off as preachy, and it can come off as like something that is forced, but it was a balance. It was again sticking to what you know, and I had the blessing of having, I say, different upbringings because I lived in different experiences, different areas, obviously in Dallas, but also from Arkansas, which is where most of my family is from on that side. Like the characters that I and like all of them are named after. They it's like more of country living, right? It's
Right.
and so I got to experience the urban, the quote unquote hood, like the and again the country living as well. I spent all of my summers out there in Arkansas. So it's I think the perspective, I guess, if that makes sense, helped me out a lot because I lived it, right? So I didn't have to force anything that I did. But again, when I talk about being cognizant, I'm aware that look, I want this character to be someone that they can keep up with. And I do this with all of my characters, but especially Isan, with him being the first, being near and dear to me. I wanted the character to be a character that's people got something out of and related to regardless of their background, right?
Right.
Regardless of their ethnic makeup or anything like that. I just wanted them to be something that be a character that people could get something out of. And so my approach to writing was to just write a genuine character. He has his flaws, he has his he's not perfect by any means, and again, I have that familiarity because of how I grew up, and I can and what I saw more so, like again, those experiences of my family members, and I can kind of connect that, or rather bridge that gap, as you said, between okay, that character is a character. He's from Texas. It feels like a character that is from Texas of his ilk, but it's also a character that no matter what walk of life that you come from, you can get something out of. And like I said, it's not a necessarily an easy thing to do, but it's one that I think if you're cognizant and you're aware that look, if you trap yourself, you can end up writing this sort of preachy, forced character. Nothing comes off as organic, and then there's only like a select amount of I guess like a specific demographic of
Mhm.
people that could get something out of. And I don't think that's what a good character becomes. Like why my favorite character growing up is like a character like a Batman, despite me not being anything like him, especially once I was growing up from the money and his
Right.
experiences, and like not having his family members. Like that's not anything that I've ever gone through, but his experience is something that I can relate to, and everybody of all walks of life have been able to get something out of. So with ISOM especially, that was something like I said I was aware of when I first put pen to pad, I guess, for lack of better terms.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. And that's inspiring. Like um well, when it comes to the characters in the Ripverse has expanded so much, like past ISOM, like it is huge. Like, do you think? Well, would you ever plan to do? Has the idea ever came up of ever doing like a team book, like a Justice League, like Avengers adjacent type book in the Ripverse?
Yeah, I mean, we've tried to especially widen our the types of demographics that we are targeting with the specific books. You're gonna have those books that are like, okay, teens and up, like your ISOMs and some of the others. But we've tried like some of the all ages. I know nobody's read it yet because it hasn't quite started fulfillment, but with Detention Crew was one that is set around some youngsters and teenagers. I can't wait for people to get their hands on that. That's written by the Saskas, and it's very much a sort of all ages. But we are entertaining some other stories actually that are already being worked on that does specifically target those demographics, because the way that I see it, if you can get them at that age, you'll have them for a lifetime, right? But meeting them where they are at is something that is very, I guess, important to us as a company, and something that we're always trying to improve of, which is why I am so itching to get out more stories, because I recognize that, especially with how the general market is set up, it's you got to target, you got to make different types of stories. Like, I always use the term meeting people where they're at, and that's exactly what I mean. Not everybody is into every single individual character or every single type of story. That's why we've expanded our catalog to include these different genres. Like, I've done the noir stuff with Salvage, and we've tapped into some kind of Norse inspiration with like the Norfolk book, and like, so it kind of entertains a more fantasy approach. We have the horror comic with Bloodruth, and I want to keep expanding and expanding. And for sure, that is a demographic, especially as teenage years, a demographic of something, a demographic that we would love to target. Is that in a team environment? Absolutely, it could be, and we are working towards that. We haven't like done our first big event yet. We have our arcs like ISOM, but we haven't quite got there yet. And maybe there will be in the future something that will bring maybe some of these heroes together. But those stories that you mentioned was obviously stories that we all have come to love. There's a massive market for that, and I absolutely would be up for making those types of stories.
Absolutely. What do you think is when do you? I'll ask this first. Do you think? Well, what are the chances of us getting a young ISOM series? That's something I really want to see.
That is it's kind of crazy how that has become one of the most in demand, I would say, series and like storyline types is young Isom. And definitely once people have seen like the statue, and we've done now this action figure that'll be in everybody's hand, which kind of depicts them both older and younger with the swappable heads. But just because of where we picked up with the story, he had already retired as a hero. So there's a lot of stories that can be told based on young guys. Some ones that I've already written. I mean, I've talked about this in the past about my universe Bible, and how it has so many different story beats and points and events that obviously the audience doesn't know anything about, but it's a constant reminder for myself and the writers to be taken into consideration. I am 1000% up for doing like a young Isom series. I know people got to see him really, really young in the Great War of Separation, but especially those younger years when he becomes Isom is yeah, I would say that it's been a lot of rumbling, definitely in like our Discord, and some people have talked about wanting maybe a young Isom series, but absolutely, I'm up for that. And it does seem like you asking me that alone lets me know that there's a demand for it, because a lot of others have brought it up as well. So yeah, I'm game for that.
Absolutely. Is there like a certain artist, like maybe, initials, CW that you want, to do the interiors?
Look, Kanan and I are working to become like this kind of dynamic duo. He is someone that I love working with. We're doing obviously Saoirse. We've done the Echoes of Scythian short story that's going to be in Ripazine issue number 6. And this is actually the first time I've said that publicly. It's funny that you asked that question, because specifically Kanan and I have talked about exactly that, of him doing some young Isom, like a young Isom series. I kid you not, he can vouch for it. I'm not making this up just because we're having this interview. I've specifically talked to him I asked him a question about this. It was right before actually we had launched the animation our first ever crowdfund with that animation. We were talking about doing a young Isom. Maybe if we wanted to test the market, we would thought about doing it through the Ripper Works program that we have here. So it's funny that you bring that up, because him and I have talked about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love Kanan White's like, oh my, that
He's so
cover, the cover of the definitive Isom with like Isom, that's different. It's too
so
good.
It is so good. He is amazing. He is he's a blessing to be around. I've learned so much, and I've had the blessing of working with a lot of artists, but obviously him and I connect so very well, and I hope just over the course of the next, I don't know, decade plus, that him and I have just pumped out so many stories together because I love working with him. The way that I can write something in a script and he can elevate it is what you want, obviously, out of an artist, but it's just a special connection with him, and he and I are working together. So absolutely, we'd be down for doing Young Ison. We'd be down for doing a lot more stories in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. And like and talking about like the speaking of like ISOM and just the market of comics, like I told you this in the live stream before, and like it is surreal that ISOM is, I'm pretty sure, like the highest, like the most profitable and the longest like standing black character in comics that we've had in like probably like the last 10 years. You know, a lot of the other black characters from the big two, just like, you know, 6 months and then it's over with. Like
Yeah.
they don't really get a lot of stuff. And I kind of wanted to ask you, like, what do you think is the, if there even is one, like, what do you think could be the cause of that? Why do you think Isom specifically as a character succeeded so well? Because he's like he makes the like his campaigns have been like the most popular. Right?
He is our most popular character, like hands down. Merchandise on up and down. He is our most, and the books are the ones that sell like after campaigns or collections, top to bottom. He is number one, and that's like it is kind of surreal to think about that.
Yeah.
Because I remember you bringing that up, and I was like, wow, he's correct, because I was trying to go out of my way to think about that, and I was like, wow, I can't really consider any. But I'll say this much: I think a lot of black characters suffer from the same thing that a lot of other like characters of different ethnic background, gender as well, suffer from, as far as the modern, at least in the West, in that, and this is going to be somewhat controversial, but I personally think that the skin tone of a character should be the least interesting thing about them. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to neglect it or ignore the fact that, well, yeah, you made them a certain tone. That's what they are, right? And comic books are a visual medium. So I'm not saying that people should ignore it, but it should be the least interesting thing about them. And so what happens is a lot of people fall in that trap from a creator standpoint. Not talking about the fans. Fans are going to like or dislike whatever they like,
Right.
or dislike for that matter. But from the creator, I think that just so many set them up for failure by hyper emphasizing the fact that, well, they are racial, and then the audience picks up on that, and then they realize just how it's all fluff. There's not a whole lot of substance to this character. There's not a whole lot of interest or intrigue about this character, and they pick that up because, well, that writer or writer, artist group set them up for failure because they were so itching to like make the black character like somebody that's prominent. And the reality is this: you can't force that.
Right.
When you think about a lot of these non-black characters that have stood the test of time, it took them in some cases decades for them to catch on and get that beloved audience. But the important thing to recognize, especially in America, but not exclusively, because if you look at at the international stage, like a character like a Superman, and how influential that he is, he's adopted and adored by all walks of life.
All right.
Right? You don't sit up there and think that, well, he has he's a fair skinned character, but he's not like but that's not what you like, the most interesting thing about them.
Exactly.
If you are going to write these black characters, again, a character that's any other type of character, it should be the least interesting thing about you. You should force yourself to not reference it at all or refer to it at all, to the point to where you make them an interesting character. So not trying to force the fact that, well, you need to like this character or enjoy this character because they're black. Like, no, they happen to be black, but there's a lot to them, and that hook is there. So if they are black, they do resonate with that character. But also, if they're white, or if they're doesn't matter, Latino or Asian or whatever that may be, they also get something out of it. That's the key. And sometimes that's not a thing that happens like immediately. And I think a lot of people don't have that patience because they feel like, well, no, I created this character. You guys wanted original black characters. Here they are. Well, that's cool, but that character might be uninteresting. Maybe there's not a whole lot of depth to them. You still have to offer something. And that's not anything that's exclusive to black characters. But that's my approach with any character that I create. I'm not trying to just have them appeal to like the racial makeup of that character or the gender of that character. I want them to be adored and loved by anybody that can pick
Absolutely.
that book up. And unfortunately, a lot of these black characters don't get that type of care and love from the creators often themselves, and that's why they're often duds. It's like a quick thing. Maybe you get a big marketing push, especially from some of those major publishers, and then it just falls off a cliff immediately. And oftentimes it's because there's nothing to it. There's no substance. It's just straight fluff.
Absolutely. Yeah. You explained that eloquently. Like, and like a while ago, I didn't really understand that because I'm not gonna lie. Like I would walk into comic shops and like I would, like me and you, like a lot of the black characters, like, Luke Cage or like,
Yeah,
or Static, or I would be like, wow, like they don't get anything. Like, I'm
yeah.
like, do people just not like, after a while, I thought maybe people just don't like black characters. But then I'm like going to the Rippaverse and I'm like, no, like, people just aren't buying those black characters, but the support behind ISOM Bloodroot has been like immense. It's
Oh yeah.
been
The two of our
amazing.
most popular post sales, like as far as impressive. I mean, like, look, it's a market. You try to have your projections and everything, but like Blood Ruth exceeded all expectations, right?
Mm.
Every single, especially I've talked about this. Like outside of Ice, that first book was like our most sold. Like as far as after the collection had ended, the book that sold the most post campaign sales, post collection sales was for Blood Ruth. Again, black character. Isom, same thing. Our most popular character is a black character. But yeah, it's just not. I do want to say that it's not an easy thing to do because it is. I tell you what is easy. It's easy to fall in that trap
Mm.
of trying to hyper focus on the fact that like the racial aspect, especially like you want them to catch on, you want them to be loved, you want them to be adopted, and you look at some of the characters that you grew up on, it's how popular that they get, but it's very easy to also lose perspective and lose sight of you're looking at characters that have been around for 30, 40, in some cases almost 80 years, that have been around, and they weren't in year 5 who they are today. You got to take your time sometimes with these characters, and you can't rush that. The audience is going to like what they like. They're a lot more sophisticated than I think buying audiences are a lot more sophisticated. I think people give them credit for. So you've got to do the work, and you have to go out of your way as you would with any other character, to create somebody that's interesting. And that's what if I'm being totally honest, is what a lot of these white characters had that benefit of, is that it forced these writers, they didn't have a social ill to really fall back on.
Yeah.
So they only had the story. That's what they had to focus on to get them to catch on. Well, if you want these black characters or characters as such to catch on, you have to have that same level of detail to where there has to be something more. You can have those frame of reference. I've created characters like with even like, like looking at African folklore of like with Takara and that character that I created. You can have that inspiration, but there's got to be something there beyond simply the fact that they are a black character, and that takes work. It does take work.
Absolutely, yeah, and props to you for like really showing the industry like how it's done, man, and like seeing and reaping, the benefits of it, and like
Thank you.
specifically what I saw, I'm like, when do you think we could expect? Well, first of all, you said that was it 100 books? You said that you plan to publish 100 books this year.
That's my goal between both Rippaverse and Ripasend. That is my goal, to get out 100 books. That's why we're moving to our like more traditional kind of like a pre-order solicitation window, not worrying so much about merchandise. That's often what holds up the releases, is like merchandise and all those other things. Now we're focusing on just like books. We have some fun things that'll be happening, especially in the middle of the year. And so, yeah, I just want to put out more books. I want to give you more Isom. I want to give you more Yairo. I want to give you more of all these characters, and new ones, obviously, and new one. I want to test the market. And I think now we're moving to a model that that makes a lot of sense instead of just focusing so much on the campaign format or the collection format and everything, just really it's about, okay, here's the book, here's the covers, here's how much it costs. We love for you to get in on it, and then just getting that delivered to you as quickly as possible. Like that's our approach going forward. And look, it's a tall order to hit that mark, but there's a lot of stuff cooking right now. And all of those, they're different creative teams. And so it's not like everybody's working on the same project simultaneously. Everybody, has, you got this creative team on that project and another on a different one. So it's gonna take some work. But that is my more or less that's my goal, right? Is to get us to 100 books by the end of the year.
Absolutely. How many of those books do you think might will be ISOM?
I would like for them. That's a good question. I would like to sprinkle in a few, for sure. We like to continue. Obviously, I try to get to the ISOM series, though. I did say that after I ended with three, just because three is a massive book. It's 144 pages, so it's a massive book. So it should hold people off for a little bit. But I did want to get back to I wanted to salvage, Sisha, my ongoing series to get ahead on those. And Norfolk, obviously being a big one, that one because that's such a loved property of ours. I wanted to flesh those out and then get back to ISOM, but I like to try to get at minimum like a graphic novel or something out with an ISOM or continuation with ISOM 4. We'll see. 4 is going to be hard to get by the end of the year, but I think we can squeeze out some of these other books. I know we've talked about like what we're doing with Yaira, and like I'm doing a Yaira story alongside Carol Brown, but we are like shuffling the deck, if you will. We're going to give do some graphic novels where some of the other writers can take their stab at like some of the other characters. So like with us doing Yaira, and you're gonna have maybe the Saska's doing like I'm not saying that they are, but doing like a character like a Isom or something like that, or Chuck Dixon doing Yaira or something like. We want to shuffle the deck, and same with those creative teams for a little bit, just to keep it fresh before everybody gets back to their like kind of mainline series.
Absolutely, yeah. And I love how I love how you keep the writers and artists like on, like almost so like when you're reading a series, you almost have like a relationship with like that creator team, like
Yes.
ISOM, like Cliff Richards, like he's like that artist, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And same thing
Yeah,
with
that's why we didn't want to switch things up like with like the graphic novels, for example, with Yaira. Like Yaira series right now is done by Deborah Carita, and of course the Saskas. And therefore, if we have some other stuff that we want to do, we can do that in like a graphic novel format, which doesn't take like, because that would have been jarring if, let's say, Yaira 4 was written by me with Will Conrad, with
yeah.
Carol Brown and Will Conrad. And like then you go back to like, no, like we want some consistency, because like to your point, people that are keeping up with this series, they have that sort of relationship and that expectation. Like it's a unique way, definitely with these artists, unique way that they have these characters looking. And I think it would be jarring to do it otherwise. So let's like use graphic novels and things of that nature to give the others some opportunities and stabs at those other characters for sure. But yeah, I want to keep like, ISOM is the series is that's Cliff Richards, that's his baby, and Norfolk is going to be Ronaldson and so forth. So we want to keep those creative teams together. Sometimes schedules don't align up, so I'm sure in the future there will be some odd chances where there is like a switch, but as much as we can, we want to keep those creative teams together.
Absolutely. Who do you think is the most underrated character in the Rippaverse?
Wow. That is such a fantastic question. Who is the most underrated? I will say that there's a lot of fun I think that we're going to be having with the character Stefania, who was introduced, created by the Saskas, and introduced in the Yaira book. And being a descendant of Yaira, there's a lot that we can do with that. The family aspect of it is, I mean, we've entertained some of it, but there's so much more that we can do. So I think she is one that I think a lot of people may consider kind of a throw in, because she's introduced in the Yaira story and she helps move Yaira story along. But with her getting added as like this kind of trainee or cadet in Alpha Corps and whatnot, just makes for some fun stories that I think we're going to tell in the future. So if I just had to choose, it would be her. Now, if I'm trying to go to my characters that I created, Sam. Sam is if you read the story that I did in Saints and Sinners, there's some more that we talk about with him, but I've got a lot of plans with him. And you know, for someone to work their way to be basically the right hand of our main character in ISOM, there's got to be something there. But there's a lot more to him than just being a ranch hand.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait. And like, can you kind of explain the Ripazine like
Yeah,
format? A lot of people like even me like yeah, just explain like the Ripazine
yeah.
format and what your goal was for like creating that type of format and like
So
using
the Ripazine is the one floppy outside of like art books, but the one like quote unquote floppy that we release. And it's supposed to be kind of a vehicle to test stories. Some are slam dunks. We know that some of these characters are going to pop off, but or we have at least a good idea. You never know with the market.
Right.
But that's a way for us as with low investment to test the waters. Do you want this character? And it's solely something that allows us to not just test the market, but you get that, which I guess is the same thing. You're getting that direct feedback from the audience. So what
Right.
happens is we'll put the book out, everybody that buys it gets it, and we specifically to those buyers, we send out surveys. How did you feel about it? Being honest with us. And that will determine whether or not, okay, do I want to keep this character around as a like a side character, or do I want to give them their own story, their own book? So now, like, and like the type of enthusiasm changes as well. So not everybody just gets their own series.
Right.
For example, Salvage gets his own graphic novel. Saoirse got her own series. Dirty Deeds gets his own series. So it's just a low effort. Like when I say effort, I mean like we're not. It's not like that we're not trying. I mean like it's not a commitment to 60-page book or something like
Right.
that. It's a fifth, like, 15 pages is where we usually keep it, more or less. Introduction, give you something to latch on to. Let us know. We want to make it informative, so we want to give you enough to, like, there's something there. So it's a different way to write as well. Like how I write the Ripazine stories is different from how I write like ISOM. So it's just a big way to test the market, and that's the more or less the point of Ripazine.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. And becoming a well, you already wrote for like you said, like Ghost wrote for like music and stuff.
Yep.
But what was it really like just making such like a like because now you're literally a comic writer. Like that's just
Yeah.
what you are, like objectively. What was it like making such a huge transition to that?
It wasn't the easiest thing to do. It was like obviously there's a lot of material out there. I looked at for inspiration, like you got Stan Lee's, how to write comics and draw comics the Marvel way. DC Comics had the great Denny O'Neil, who Chuck Dixon got to work with. He's like that's the approach that I adopt, excuse me, the more script format. Will Eisner has a nice one, but for sure DC's with Denny O'Neil is for me the go-to because I knew how to kind of just craft a script and approach it that way. So it wasn't the easiest of things to do, but I wanted to equip myself with the most knowledge that I could before I had ever read my first story. And also that script got seen by professionals in the game before anybody had ever like saw it, like the book itself. But also working with professionals was something that I wanted to make sure that I did. So I surrounded myself with obviously Cliff. He's been around the block.
Mhm.
Uh, Done work for all the big dogs. Done everything from Shazam on up and down. You have Wonder Woman, everything. You also have Gabe El Taib, who was a good colorist. Done a lot of stuff, and especially once we started adding other writers, and I got to actually like shadow them and how they approach. Chuck Dixon is just a wealth of knowledge,
Yeah.
and I learned so much about the process of creativity. Just obviously it's not a script that he hasn't done. It's not a genre really he hasn't done. The man is one of the most prolific writers of all time, and I learned so much from him. I remember we collaborated on the Great War Separation story,
Right.
and there was a one beat in it that I remember so vividly, where I said, "All right, I got these points. This is what I want to kind of hash out in this story." And there was one instance where he was like, he could not make sense of it. And it wasn't like he shot the idea down like it was stupid. Even if he thought it was, his approach was he knew that I'm a youngster and he wanted me to be able to like learn from it. So he was like, okay, this doesn't make I can't I think the direct quote was that he said that he's finding trouble making sense of this specific like beat in the story, right? And maybe I'll tell this story at a later date what it is once the story for the Great War Separation wraps up. But he was like, I can't connect this, and this is why. And so we took some of what I had in that idea, specifically with that beat, and we made it make sense. And that was something that he led the charge on. But like I've learned, that was just one of the many instances that I specifically learned from Chuck, and obviously working with and alongside and seeing scripts from like other writers and all the other pros, whether it's Saska's, Baron, all of them. It's been awesome. It's been absolutely incredible. So it wasn't the easiest of transition. The most difficult transition I had was just becoming a better professional. But as far as writing, you surround yourself with some awesome people, and also people that are absolutely rooting for you, right? There's a lot of professionals that that they got to see the script of ISOM and just were absolutely like they wanted this to do good. They were rooting for me, any time that I had like any sort of hiccup or anything, it was always like, hey, there's too much riding on this. You got to keep going. You got to keep going, and you got to work. And I'm very appreciative of that. And so surrounding myself with professionals was important. And it helped that transition. And now I feel like, yeah, I feel really good. I feel like every story that I write is better.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, everyone that I write is better, and that's just with improving upon everything that I've learned over the last years.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I saw 1 and 2. I saw 1, I was like, okay, I'm feeling this. I like this. I saw 2, I'm like, ooh, this is, it really it got even. Oh yeah, I'm curious, what made you go from, because obviously in issue 1, you had the thought bubbles. You brought back,
Yeah.
the classic. That's pretty, OG nostalgic for many people. What made you want to decide to change that to the more modern, the square boxes?
Yeah, it was. I know that we got a new lettering team going into. It was right after. I'm trying to remember what the last book was, but we got a new team, and these guys have been around doing it's a team. It wasn't just one individual letterer. And I know, remember them going through some of our other work, and they were like, this is good, but we can make some improvements. And not only can we make some improvements, we can bridge that gap. We can say, okay, we can give it a more sleek, modernized kind of look, but not so modern that it like completely is just doesn't draw any sort of inspiration from like of old, if that makes sense. So again, it was with the team that obviously it's grown. I mean, you can say that about pretty much every aspect of the company, where it's from where we started versus where we're at. It's You've added new perspective. And so I think even now, especially, we're getting to a point to where like the lettering style is starting to become even more unique for the title. I think you really start to see that with Norfolk, and like the inspiration that I guess the approach that the letterers had with that book, considering the era, considering the fantasy element, the Norse mythology and stuff like that, and inspiration. It's a shift from like ISOM, which is modern and it has like some urban elements to it. So it's been cool hearing like as our team has grown, everybody that we've added to the team, their approach has been, okay, we're doing something okay. It's not bad. It's good even. But what can we do to make it great? And so it's a constant improvement from the letters, the art, colors to the writing, like I mentioned earlier. And I love that. So like where we're at now, I think 5 years from now, it's going to be even better. We're just going to continue to improve.
Absolutely. I'm curious. The character Chatterin.
Mhm.
You have a poster. That's him, right? By you, right?
Yes, back there. Trajan's back there. Yep.
Yeah. Does he appear in Ice 3?
You haven't read it yet. Let's just say obviously the big reveal is in ISOM 2 is why he quit. I will say that doesn't just in ISOM 3, it doesn't just stop there. It wasn't like, hey, that's introduction. We're just gonna move on with the story. No, ISOM 3 touches on that. And obviously Shajan he's a big part of it.
Mm.
So because you haven't read it, I don't want to spoil it for you.
Please
But
don't, because man.
I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised with the direction that it goes. So I'll just leave it at that. He is obviously integral to ISOM's development,
Right.
and we did not just leave that entire interaction and that flashback in ISOM 2 as if it just happened and then we just moved on. Like, no, it was something that was core to this arc, and it was core to ISOM's development, and you get that in ISOM 3. So I'll say that much.
Amazing, because like I remember I read ISOM 2. I love that. I was like, and I got that part was the only part I had a hiccup on. I was like, oh, like this is really quick. Like we just flash forward.
Yeah.
But it's like the next man. Oh my god, I'm so much like I'm more and more just immersed in the entire universe. But like you spoke to like one of your biggest challenges was becoming a better professional. Can you kind of like explain like the journey behind that, like specifically?
Yeah, most
And, like, why?
definitely. So full transparency, I was in the YouTube space.
Right.
I've been here for a very long time, and it's a big difference doing that and the type of content that you do. It's just some of it is not really useful
Right.
if you are trying to build your own company. Now, obviously, if I was still just content creation, I would have kept doing that. But I was very, interactive with especially people that from it didn't matter who you were, whether you're a fan or whether you didn't like me. Being that interactive, it becomes a distraction when you are actually trying to build and create like your own original content.
Right.
And I had to put this in the perspective of, okay, why did I create this company in the first place? It was not to go down the same route of being in some sort of perpetual conflict with folks. That was not what I created this for, it to be a fun environment. So one of the things that I had to work on was transitioning from content creator Eric to owner of multi-million-dollar company Eric. And it's the same guy, but what we're trying to do is completely different.
Right.
Where doing that was very useful for YouTube, right? And for views and all that stuff. Great for it, actually. But for actually running and operating not just a comic book company, but a company that wants to continue to grow and thrive, not just as some like blip, like something that you want to do long term, it requires you to act differently from how I was acting before. And so it wasn't easy because I had been doing what I had been doing so much, and I had to change. Let's be completely honest. So the type of content needed to adjust. I had to dedicate more time to my craft, right? If I wanted to improve on it. And so you realize just how much with what I do, the harshest realizations is 24 hours isn't enough in a day.
Yeah. Especially being a father now, like
I was just about to bring that up. Like that was another game changer, right? And like the legacy that I want to leave my child. It's like I want to create. Like this is what I'm doing this for, to create, not to do that. Like fans will do that, viewers will do that, audiences will do that, and they can do that. But for me, my job is to facilitate the best version of the Rippaverse. And in order to do that, it requires the best version of myself. And so I had to become a better professional, not worrying so much about conflict, not talking about what other companies and stuff are doing, doesn't mean that I'm like gonna burn my comic books or anything. No, these are stuff that I'm gonna keep, and I'm gonna continue to read even. But as far as how I engage with the interactions that I have, especially at a public like sphere, is it just needs to be more conducive to actually running this company. But one thing I will say is this: like I said, despite it not being easy, I've reaped the benefits of just being a better professional. So much opportunity has come to me.
Absolutely.
And it's something that you wish you did it earlier. Even I wish I did it from day one. Like I wish I'd done it from day one. And just because of the opportunities that have come, because people just they want to deal with companies and people that are focused on building, right, more than anything, not conflict, not any, just focus on building. And so there's a lot of stuff that we have got, like, if I don't become a better professional and work at that, the McFarlane Toys thing doesn't happen. That
Right.
doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen like in like two instances. It doesn't happen with an action figure. Maybe you get away with the Yaira statue, but to do that, and not just the action figure, but a line where we can do more of them, that doesn't happen if I don't become a better professional. Stuff that we've been able to accomplish with even on the represent side doesn't happen. Like what we've been able to accomplish and some of the stuff that we have coming with represent and some of the people that we're going to be working with, that stuff doesn't happen if I don't become a better professional. And obviously some of the stuff that is going to blow people's minds,
Yeah.
some of the stuff that we're going to be doing with the Rippaverse here, that stuff does not happen if I don't work to be a better professional. So um even some of the stuff that I didn't realize was going to happen and I was going to be blessed with happens because I become a better professional. So it's about serving this company the best way that I can, and thus serving on my customers the best way that I can. So while it wasn't easy because of what I would I guess how YouTube and algorithms are geared, it kind of encouraged always interacting, engaging in just about everything. Now it's like, I'd rather have pleasant engagements, and that's what I focus more on, and it just works better. It just does.
Yeah, and you get a lot of that. I mean, it's more. I mean, like hate and stuff and negativity, like it's just loud. But like, man, the amount of people like in our Discord, the people like just
Oh man, it's live in there, man.
yeah, and just like enjoying, the amazing stories, and it's and I get it. But I mean, I kind of get like how some people could like see like be not understand the evolution, because it's like, I mean, 5 years ago, could people like picture you writing these freaking fantastic stories?
Yeah, I know, right? You couldn't imagine that. You couldn't. Let's be honest. Nobody could have imagined that I would be doing what I was doing, because definitely with how how I was, like I was doing, live debates, not just like even on the internet. I'm talking about like, speaking engagements, colleges and stuff like that. And like, that worked for that time, and it made sense, I guess, for what I was doing. But yeah, the evolution, it was real and it needed to happen. It absolutely needed that. It wasn't easy. I'm not gonna sit up and pretend like, oh yeah, it was an easy decision. I guess in retrospect, yeah, because of like, again, the benefits that I'm reaping. But that was something that I had to kind of grow into.
Right.
And I had, I talked with people personally it was positions that I value, and they felt it was best that I approached it that way as well. And yeah, it was the best decision that I made. I'm more productive than I ever had been, as well as why I'm able to pump out more stories. And also, you brought up the fact that, I'm a father now as well. And it's like, that's again, only so much time in the day. So how would I rather spend it? Having the pleasant experience of talking, if I'm going to engaging in the more pleasant experiences, and such, or creating, like if I have to use my time that's not dedicated to my family to do something, I'd rather be having pleasant experiences, pleasant engagements, and creating. And that's what I need to be doing for the company. So wasn't easy. I'll be the first to tell you. I'm not gonna sit up there and lie to you and act like that was just like the easiest thing to do, to go from, hey, guy that was having live debates in person and on screens and doing all these reviews and all that guy is now focusing on his original content and like hyper focusing on his just regular like his original properties, right? Like
Right.
I'm not, it doesn't mean that I can't get enjoyment out of other people's stuff. I can do that. But as far as like what my bandwidth is going to be dedicated to, it needs to be, if it's not dedicated to my family, having pleasant engagements with my fans and customers and creating. That's just where it's got to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. The perfect analogy I had, like, yeah, because like creating your own stuff, like the characters you've created. I imagine that obviously you haven't like worked on like a different character you didn't create, but like I imagine that I kind of liken working on like a pre-established character almost as like you're writing like a fan fiction of that character. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? Because like so many people have done it before you. But
Right.
like I imagine there's so much like just joy and prosperity and like this is
It's
my
therapeutic.
fully right, yeah, my
It's,
fully
it's
realized
literally therapeutic for me. It's like I enjoy it. Like I work. I've said this before. I am working harder than I ever have in my life right now. Like I am. I sleep after my wife and kid go to sleep, and I wake up before them. And I'm 7 days. Because the owner is 7 days, no days off. But I love it. Like I actually love it, and it is different. It's different from, like, again, I've had the experience of like ghostwriting and stuff. Like this is a different animal. This is a different animal, and I enjoy it. Like it's something that is, like I said, therapeutic. For me, it's healthy, and I just love it. I just absolutely love it. So that's why I spend most of my time doing it. It's like I get it. There are folks, because definitely if you knew me, if your only frame of reference is me creating like comic book content and covering it, reviews, positive or negative, I can understand why you may be like, this is a different guy, and that evolution can be a little off-putting, I guess,
Mhm.
for you, because you expect me to interact and engage a little differently, which again, I totally get that. But where I'm at is where I need to be. And I can still even improve, but I just love what I do here, and I want to keep at it.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, you're succeeding at it. The Riververse is doing, phenomenal. I can't wait for like all of the new announcements, because you've been alluding to a lot of stuff, you know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah.
Like you just I can't wait to see exactly what that is. I guess the last thing we could talk about is like your new Ripper, your business book, like your it's not a comic, obviously. Can you explain like your new book to new people that you're doing about like the
Yeah,
Riververse life?
so how to build a creative business the Riververse way is an idea that I've been kicking around in my head for a long time. And there is a lot of material out there about the creative side of the business.
Right.
It's not to say that that's a bad thing, because most people that are in the industry are not like owners, like and that makes sense, right? Like they're contracted to do a thing, right? And that's totally understandable. The game needs it, the industry needs it, but there's not a lot of material on the business aspect of it. It exists. There's some of it out there. Some of it even touched on some of the books that I talked about, but really focusing on like the actual business element, there's a lack, I feel, of material. And there's just so much that I've learned along the way and I've picked up on. Now, I think that is very important to it, is that the reason why, a big reason why, not the reason, but a big reason why the Riververse succeeded is because of our business model.
Mhm.
But that wasn't new. Like when I say it wasn't new, I had been doing creative business for a very, very long time, obviously, namely in music. And there's a massive cross. In fact, a lot of people don't know this, that if you don't know me from backwards, like crowdfunding, like that was something that I was already doing. We did that with back. Our first album was crowdfunded, right? And
Mhm.
charted on Billboard. So I had a lot of experience doing business. I also came from the 2000s, like when I was a teenager and creating music. That was the mixtape out of the trunk era,
Mhm.
like it's so I got to experience a lot along the way to get me to where I think I have an idea of what works and what does not. And I wanted to, and also obviously in just the well, technically almost 4 years, right? That we've, well, I guess it has been 4 years, three and a half, at least to the public, but as far as the company
Right.
itself, it's been 4 years, because obviously we were making an ice prior to July. But it was it's a lot that I've even learned in that period of time, because that's what I think every business owner does. There's going to be a lot of trial, a lot of error. You're going to try things that work. You're going to do things that don't, and you want to obviously do less of what didn't and more of what did. And so this is the first book that we've done that is just informational. And I wanted to compile all of the information that I need, that I could, to hopefully help people, give people not only perspective on how we approached it with the Rippaverse, but also assist them. And I made it's yes, we reverence the Rippaverse. It is the Rippaverse way,
Right.
but it's something that I think will apply to pretty much most of it will apply to just about anybody in a creative industry trying to make a business out of it, right? And it's a passion of mine. I'm always trying to help people out with that, because that's the hiccup for a lot of people. You can have all the best and brightest ideas you want, but if you have not figured out the business element, it will fall. It will fail. That's just the bottom line. It doesn't matter how creative you are. It doesn't matter how good you are at what you do. You can be the best writer, the best artist, but if you don't have the business element intact, it's just not going to go anywhere, or it will be very short-lived. So I just wanted to compile all that information in hopes that it helped other folks that will read it, and maybe I'll do some more books. Maybe I'll do even more specific ones, because this is like a more of a general one.
Right.
But I can make a book. I could probably, for each chapter, I could do an entire book on if I just laid out everything. But I wanted to do something that I think a lot of people can get something out of.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Thank you so much, for coming on.
Of course.
I do want to say, like, I know, like, you don't like when people, and I definitely agree. I know, like, hyper emphasizing like race and stuff, like,
Yeah.
you're way more than just a black man, obviously, like, but I will say, like, as a black man, I'm definitely, unapologetically yourself, like, and,
Yeah.
not having to follow anybody's rules, creating your own. Like, I gotta say,
Absolutely.
I respect and look up to you, man. Like, and
Appreciate you, brother.
absolutely, I appreciate like everything you've done, and I can't wait to see all the next great things that you do as well.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I love and support, man. And this has been lovely, man. We can do it again whenever you want, man. But I appreciate you having me.